Well, Erik and I are happy to be here with you today and looking forward to seeing his Girl Friday with an audience tonight. We both have seen it and looked at it again more recently. But I would just very quickly like to go around the table, and since we didn't get to meet all of you, just say your name and what you do. We'll start with you.
Gordon Smith. I am a writer, also a video producer myself, but I write web articles mostly for a website called noshoe.com, also for Theater Jones. And back in the 80s, I used to sit next to you at some of those screenings when we had that screening room on Meadows and Central.
I remember well. I remember it very well.
And Philip and everybody was there. We had our own screening room. I don't know what happened to that. I'd lived in Florida for most of the 90s and came back. When I came back, that was gone. So I guess that didn't last long, but that was a great deal, wasn't it?
Yes, yes it was. Okay, next.
My name is Michelle Cooper, and I have a blog that I write with some of my friends, and we write about movies and geeky stuff. And then my day job, I do digital marketing, where I try and convince all the young people to buy things that are good for them. Not always good for them. That I think are good for them. So I understand the struggle.
They aren't drugs.
No. So I try and crack the marketing code.
And you're from Dallas?
I'm from Fort Worth. I was born in Fort Worth, and I was raised in Minneola.
All right, all
I'm
right.
an East Texas girl. Small town. We have the oldest operating playhouse in the state of Texas. If anybody's interested,
That's
it's
great.
there. They show
Where's
movies.
this at?
Mineola, Texas.
Oh, Mineola, okay.
They show movies every Friday and Saturday, and sometimes they do plays. So, fun fact for everybody.
Very good. And Christy?
I'm Christy Putnam from Native Houstonian, and by my day job is I'm a college English instructor, and any other time I write about classic films. I'm a social media, I guess, maven for the Turner Classic Film Festival, and I was the social producer. I tweeted and visited with people and got short interviews, and I'm a blogger and a writer. And I'm very happy to be here today and meet you, our Texas Girl Friday.
And you, sir?
I'm Deb Shapiro. Starting about 10 years ago, I reestablished one of Hollywood's early motion picture studios, the Selig Polyscope Company. And from there, what we've been doing is everything from DCP creation to supporting film festivals. We have a film blog called Selig Film News, where we've kind of turned it into covering nothing really only film festivals. And we pride ourselves in filmmaker interviews and in-depth one-on-ones with just anybody, not just the famous people, but the people that are starting out. But yeah, so at Selig we deliver everything from digital projection to film restoration to film history and creative services. So we're really establishing the old company back. We've obtained all the copyrights and all the trademarks and stuff. So
Wonderful.
Fascinating.
Very
I think
interesting.
that's wonderful.
I just
And
want to interview you later. So.
Yeah.
And I'm Gotti Elkon. I actually work with Deb with Selig Film News. We do all the interviews, as Deb was saying, for film festivals around Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, basically anywhere we can go to. And I started out blogging a little bit before that and teamed up with him about 6 years ago, and we've known Kelly ever since, basically before then. So yeah, we like covering every film and theater around the town.
you covered the Lone Star Festival in Fort Worth, yes.
yeah, I actually worked it the first couple of years.
Yes.
So our company sponsors every major film festival in town because we believe the importance of these film festivals and exhibition of these films.
We hear you. And you, sir?
I'm Chase Pond. I am actually a young college student here in Texas. I was born in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, but I live in Melissa. And I am a currently independent writer, blogger on mostly gaming, but also film, fine arts, geeky stuff. I also do a little bit of PR as well. Currently not for anything but passion, but it is a career path that I am doing my best on.
So we have a very diversified group here. That's wonderful. Some of you may not know the highlights of my career or the length of my career, but just very quickly, thumbnail sketch. I started with WBAP-TV in 1948, 2 weeks before the TV station signed on the air. At that time, my entry-level job was as a writer. I had just graduated from Purdue University with a degree in broadcasting and lacking only 3 hours of having a double major in psychology. Concurrent with the writing responsibilities, when there was a need for talent on the air, and keeping in mind now when television first started in 1948, we weren't on full time. We were on just a few hours in the evening. But at that time, the network didn't have the instant communication with us that they have now, and we had to provide a lot of our own programming. So we were doing local game shows and et cetera, and I did many of those. I was Vanna White before there was a Vanna White. And then it just went from there. Then in 1960, I started doing a talk show, a daily talk show. I was the producer as well as the talent of the show. And don't ask me how I did it, I just did it. Then in 1975, our station was purchased by an Eastern broadcasting company, purchased by Lynn Broadcasting. And Lynn Broadcasting said, up until this time, I had always been under the program department, as under the entertainment side of the business. And we've got to move that girl to the news department. I thought, oh, glory. Oh, no, God, don't do this to me. And because there had always been kind of a separation between the program department and the news department. So anyway, I was moved into the news department and started doing an afternoon show, a magazine format show, with Chip Moody. If any of you have been around long enough, you remember Chip Moody, a wonderful guy. And Chip and I thoroughly enjoyed working together, and we did that for 2 years, and then they decided that they didn't want the magazine format anymore, and so I came up with the idea. I had been kind of kicking it around anyway. I said, how about me doing an entertainment segment in that new 5 p.m. hard news, the program that you're going to start? I said we would be the first in the market, if not the Southwest. And I said, traveling around, seeing what they're doing in New York and LA and Chicago, I know there's a place for that kind. I get plenty of material and interviews and things. And so they said, let us check upstairs. That always meant with the sales and the management people. And the next day, the news director said to me, hey, they want you to do that. You'll start Monday. So, so that continued on. In 2000, we were purchased by NBC Network. So WBAP, which at Lynn Broadcasting time became KXAS-TV. So NBC became the sole owner of our station in 2000. And at that time, they said, no more travel. And I said, if I don't travel, I can't get the interviews. Well, you know, that's up to you. There's plenty of stuff locally. And I thought, I do not want to go back to covering kindergarten pageants again. So at that time, I thought, this is a good time for me to bow out. They didn't want me to leave. The last day I was there, the manager called me in and said, you can't leave. We're going to tear up all these papers. And I said, no, I'm leaving. And within a few months, I had a call from them. They said, would you come back on a, on a part-time basis? Excuse me. And I said, I would consider that. So from that time, I have been on a part-time basis. And I don't have any set number of stories that I do. I just do stories that I know they would like to have and would want. And some weeks I might do 2, then I might go 2 weeks and not do any. So that's the kind of the thumbnail sketch. How does Erik come into my life? Erik, I think you should tell that story.
I thought you were going to tell the short version.
He constantly insults me.
That's how you know it's a good working.
Yeah.
Let's see, like all of you guys probably, I grew up watching Bobbie, and I was my father was a photographer, and so he was a huge film fan, so I grew up watching films, all types of films from all over the world. My nickname was Federico Fellini, if that tells you the breadth. So anyway, I grew up watching Bobbie, and I was at UTA. I just come back from Portland from film school, and I was finishing up my degree at UTA Arlington, and I saw a ad for an intern at NBC5 for Bobbie, and I was like, oh wow, that'd be pretty cool. And so I called her, and we had an interview, and it went really well. And I needed a paid internship, and NBC wasn't willing to pay, and so I had to turn it down. And she came back, and they offered me, I think it was minimum wage or whatever it was at the time. So I was able to do that, and to get paid to work with Bobbie and watch interviews and log footage from movies and stuff like that. It was just a dream job for a filmmaker. And it was also my job to, as we were talking earlier, it was my job to clear Bobbie from the 3/4-inch tapes that surrounded her. So I got to categorize those, and once we left in 2000, once NBC took over, we took all those and put them into a storage facility, and I've been slowly digitizing those over time. It's a slow process. There's literally a room this size full of tapes. Like, she saved everything.
Wow.
We lost some in a church where we had them stored before they had a flood, and we lost, I don't know, 25%.
Wow.
Mostly a lot of the film stuff we lost. But so that's kind of my relationship with Bobbie now, outside of being very close friends, is restoring that film and the videotapes and stuff like that.
And he's in charge then of our website, which is Bobbie, Bobbie, Wygant, Wygant.com. Bobbie, Wygant.com. And you can just go there, and a long rainy weekend, you can just go through, and that's just, it's the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot there, but there's so much more that could be there and will be, hopefully, one day. Let me just pause here and see if there are any questions that you want to ask. Yes, Christy.
I was just wondering, what made you so curious about people that you wanted to interview, all of these famous celebrities?
It started apparently as a child, because I remember when I was very young, my mother saying to my father one night, and I overheard the conversation, she said, "And that girl drives me crazy with questions, and I don't know the answers to all of them." And so I think I was just that kind of child. I was always very inquisitive. My grandfather was prominent in the community, and he knew everybody, and he'd like to take me around with him various places. I was the eldest of 3 children, and the only girl. And so I think the influence of my grandfather, who was very outgoing with people, I always liked people. And I must say that since the majority of my work has been interviewing and reporting, that my studies in psychology have been equally as helpful as what I learned as a broadcasting major. So I think that curiosity is something that kids have, or most you know, or they don't have. Yes.
I have.
You know, I'm 36, 30, I'm gonna turn 37 in a month, and, you know, I've been around the internet as long as it's been kind of in the mainstream. Could you kind of talk about the excitement of being hired at WBAP television and the excitement of going on the air and working on a new medium? I mean, I feel the same way as, you know, with the internet stuff and YouTube and when that all came about.
It was extremely exciting. First of all, you know, to come out of college and get with a big organization like that, and own WBAP was owned by Carter Publications, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Eamon Carter was a visionary, always, you know, wanted it to be bigger and better than anybody else's, and then you know, doing something brand new like television and going before a camera, and I had experience of being in front of crowds, although I never wanted to be an actor. I didn't want, you know, I used to look at movies. I've always been a movie fan, and I would see, you know, sloshing around in muddy, cold water, and I thought, yeah, you know, I want to be part of that business. But always loved movies and had great admiration for actors and directors and the people who made movies. But yes, and I still find it thrilling because the business keeps changing all the time. You know, if I went away and didn't go near the TV station for 6 months, and then I would go back, there would be all this new stuff. Well, what is that? What does that do? What? You know, we don't do so-and-so anymore. You know, that's just the way the business is. But I find that invigorating and exciting, and I love that. And Erik is being a filmmaker, is constantly telling about, you know, new cameras, new lenses and everything. And I think you get pretty jazzed and pretty excited about that sort of thing. You never get caught up, do you?
No, it changes every year, every month now. But yeah, I mean, when I started working there with Bobbie, to actually step into Channel 5 for the first time and step on that set and the control room, it was like being at NASA for me. You know, and I can only imagine what it felt like when you first started there.
Yeah. And when we went to color in 1954, WBAP went to full-time color. And by that, I mean everything was in color, news and everything. We didn't switch back and forth to black and white. We were airing more color TV per week than the NBC network. Wow. And that was exciting because there, you know, were new rules and new experiments, and so that opened a whole new thing for us.
Do you know how many, well, first in 1948, how many people had black and white TVs in Dallas, and in 54, how many had color? Do you have any idea of the saturation of the market in those times?
The reason that they started the noontime talk show was to encourage people to buy color TV sets. And the man who was, his title was Director of Broadcasting, but he was really a Star-Telegram officer. He was the circulation manager. Harold Huff was his name. And Mr. Huff was also the chief guy running all the broadcasting properties. And it was his idea, I'm told, that he said, we got to sell more color television sets, and we got to do something that'll get people to want to buy TV, a color TV. And so he said, get the ladies interested. If they want color TV, staying at home all day, you know, it's more apt to happen. He says, we need programs that'll attract the ladies. And either he or someone said, we need fashions. Ladies, you know, like to look at fashions and to see them in color. So that was one of the things that was a must in every one of those noontime programs, was there was a fashion segment, and the way they did it, they went to various department stores and said, will you take a week, will you take a week, will you take a week, and your job is to provide the models and the fashions, and come out and work with Bobbie and put on this fashion segment.
Like Neiman's, I'm sure.
And, no, you know, oddly, Neiman's didn't want to participate. Neiman's didn't need us, you know. No, but we had, one store I remember was Meacham's and Monig's and Leonard's and some of these local department stores. And now the big local department store doesn't exist as much anymore as it used to. But that was how we sold color
Must
TV.
have had a TV dealer as a sponsor then. saying,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
"Here's where you can
Oh,
buy
yeah,
it."
oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
You mentioned getting the ladies interested, so it's actually really inspiring to hear, you know, a woman who made her way in this industry, starting in the 1940s. What was that like, being a woman, and I'm guessing was a pretty predominantly male work environment?
Well, you know, in watching His Girl Friday, of course, she was what we call a hard news reporter. I mean, here she was, you know, going to cover a murder case and a guy going to be executed. So hard news doesn't get any harder than that. And so at that time in our newsroom, there were no women reporters doing anything. And that didn't happen until along about in the 60s. It was in the 60s when they hired a woman named Sharon Noble, and Sharon became a regular beat reporter. And so this movie is a 1940 setting. So, but what the newspapers had at that time, they did have women reporters, but they were doing usually lady-type stories, you know, fashions and society and that kind of thing. And in LA, they had these two women, Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, and they were the Hollywood gossip people, Hollywood gossip queens. And I personally didn't want any part of gossip, and I let that be known when they asked me to take over the talk show. I said, you know, I was quoting Alexander Wolcott. I said, you know, my guideline will be, it can't be, what was it? Not fattening, I'm losing the, anyway, illegal, immoral, or fattening.
Oh,
I
right,
said my motto is, if it isn't illegal, immoral, or fattening, we'll put it on. Well, we did put chefs on who were doing some fattening things, I guess. We broke that commandment. But that's just the way the business was. Now, as a woman, did I feel uncomfortable having to work with all those men? Not really. I really didn't. My husband and I were the only two people who had any broadcast training. We were the only two people with broadcasting degrees. One man who was the head of our production department had actually worked for GE's TV station in Albany, New York. And so he had hands-on TV experience, but he was the only one. And we were all learning together. And maybe part of the comfort was the fact that my husband was also on staff there. Although we didn't really work that closely together. He never directed a show that I did. His entree jumping from being a staff announcer to being on the television side was that he had a lot of professional theatrical lighting experience, and that was his entree to TV. While he was at Purdue University, the university Music Hall is bigger than Radio City Music Hall by about 6 or 8 seats, I think. Anyway, it's a wonderful music hall, and I run into people, performers, every so often who'll say, oh yeah, I work at the Purdue Music Hall. That's a wonderful facility. You could stand on the stage and talk to somebody in the top balcony in a voice as modulated as we are here. But I think because I had some knowledge and I could kind of guide and direct, and I learned from the people I was working with. One man was out of Baylor University and had had a lot of theatrical stage experience and with sets and painting sets and building sets, and we all just we were a small group, and we all, hey, let's put on a show. Like Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland, let's put on a show. Yes.
What made you keep all that footage, or at least want to have all that footage kept? Where so many other TV stations get rid of their footage or even lose so much of that stuff. The fact that you kept an archive and then now you're digitizing it, that so many people don't get that chance. What made you decide that I need to keep track of all of this stuff I'm doing?
I'll let Erik say, because I know Erik is what he's thinking.
For me, it was just all the stuff that I watched when I was there. As a film fan, I like, well, if I am enjoying this stuff, then there's got to be millions of other people that would love to see it. And so probably 2 or 3 times a week, I get emails from producers that are doing special editions of certain movies, and they want to license these interviews. And so we have to go through NBC New York. It's kind of a crazy process, but that's why I did it. I mean, to save it. I mean, you're right. The station would literally leave notes saying, we're going to clean out the basement. If there's anything down there that you want, take it. Otherwise, we're throwing it all away.
Yes, at one point they said, the news director said to me, we have to have that space where all your stuff is down in the basement. And he said, we have to have it right away. And I said, well, give me a chance to find a place for it, And a couple of days went by. Are you working getting that stuff out of the basement? Yes, sir, And I felt it had, I don't know, first of all, I'm a pack rat. Second of all, I felt that it would have historical value. And I just couldn't see throwing the stuff out. But the news director finally, he issued an ultimatum, and he said, I'm telling you, fish or cut bait, but get that stuff out of there. And so Erik got a couple of his buddies, and I lined up the place where we could store it. And
I don't know if you remember when we were transporting that stuff, the trailer was so heavy that it actually got a flat on 30.
Oh.
And we had to go get a new tire.
I'm glad I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What do y'all plan to do with it? Because like you said, I think it will have great historical value. You look at, newspapers that they put on that film stuff that I can't remember the name of. Microfilm, yeah. I mean, I remember being a kid and going to the library and reading just about history, and I feel like that for, since the dawn of broadcasting, a lot of our history is recorded. So once you digitize it, what do you have plans to do with it? Like put it in an archive or? Yeah,
I mean, right now it just exists on her website. So we have all this stuff backed up. So once I digitize it, that's where it goes. But I mean, it's really, we don't charge for it unless it's licensed. I mean, that was kind of our attitude, that it was for everybody, kind of public domain. Anybody can go on her website and look up an actor or an actress and watch it. I mean, that's what we wanted. We just wanted it to get out there. And then whatever benefit from that comes, then we'll take it at that point. But
well, thank you. That's a very valuable resource.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering how far back this goes, and like to one-edge quad, 16 millimeter, and I did read that you were doing your talk show when the Kennedy assassination happened. Does any of that still exist?
Well, now that was, I was on live, And so there was no tape made of that. Now, the Kennedy assassination footage is all on the news side. I mean, the news people have that in their archives. I shouldn't say they, because now I am news. Since 1975, I am news. And I must say, I don't know if I made that clear, getting transferred to the news department was the best thing that ever happened to me. Wow. Absolutely. And I went, you know, not kicking and screaming because I didn't want them to just, you know, cut me loose. But I was not looking forward to it. And the reason being that this is one of the things that you notice right away, Erik and I both did, in His Girl Friday, is that the noise level of that press room was just deafening. Now, if you walk into the newsroom at NBC5, it sounds like that, quiet, because there are no typewriters, no teletypes going ding, 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 ding. Mm-hmm. You know, that. And all I knew about the newsroom was that every time I went in there for whatever reason, and I really liked all the people who worked in there, that I would go have lunch with the guys, and you know, I liked all the people. But you go in that newsroom, especially from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon until about 7 in the evening, and it sounded like a riot was breaking out at any moment. I mean, the noise level and the yelling and the screaming, and do you have so-and-so, and that's in editing, and blah, 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 you know. It's just a deafening atmosphere. And so...
So none of your shows prior to when you entered the news side, none of those were recorded, like your talk shows?
The show itself, we don't have any of those, do we? I mean,
No.
The show itself was not. But when I would go to, when the film companies would invite me to LA or New York or wherever,
Yeah.
and we would shoot in the early days on 16 millimeter film, then we moved to 3/4 and then to Beta. So that's the stuff that's in the archive.
We have a lot of 16 millimeter film, but there are snippets, I think, of certain shows, maybe not the talk show, but there are snippets of shows that have survived from being transferred from earlier people to videotape.
And we do have tapes of when I was doing the Bobbie at the Movies. We do have tapes of those 30-minute shows. Yeah, we do have those. But I don't think we don't have any of those on the site, do we? Any of those 30-minute shows?
Some from the late 70s, early 80s, I think.
And then we have some others that are in storage.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You worked with a lot of legends, you know, Channel 5, WBAP, basically you guys were pioneers. And I feel like that one pioneer, Harold Taft, he left us in '91. Could you talk about him? Because I think a lot of people have forgot about Harold. And, you know, you were pioneering in your entertainment coverage, and in a lot of people's minds that he was pioneering in weather. And could you talk about Harold and what he was like as a person, on and off the camera?
Harold Taft, Harold and I were very good friends. He used to come, because most of my work was at night, and he'd come and he'd stand in the doorway of my office, and then his was down the hall. And so he'd stand in the doorway and talk to me like this, but he was constantly looking down the hall, listening for a phone that would be ringing. Now, I'm talking 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning maybe, and he would give me all the latest scuttlebutt of what upstairs was thinking and about doing. You know, we were friends like that. For 16 years, we co-hosted the MDA telethon together. We were good friends, good buddies. And he had a wonderful sense of humor that he wasn't always able to, you know, expose on the air. I mean, you know, weather was not a funny business. But he absolutely wrote the Bible on doing weather reporting and forecasting for television. Anybody in the meteorological world will say the same thing. Oh, Harold Taft wrote the Bible. So he is revered. Anytime I go to speak before an audience, I'm not surprised that you brought it up, because invariably someone brings up the name of Harold Taft. He was a wonderful person, an extremely good person. He and his wife, they took a boy to raise in addition to their own children. Harold did lots of really charitable things that people never heard about, and he didn't really want to talk about it. But, you know, God had to have a special place for Harold Taft. That's all I can say.
To piggyback on that too, back to that station memo about cleaning out the basement, one of the things I found down there were Harold Taft's original barometric pressure dials.
Oh, wow.
All big black metal, steel metal dials, and so I've kept those, yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, those would have gone in the trash, thanks to NBC.
Bobbie, in all your traveling, when you would go back and forth to LA and New York before NBC took that away from you, what was that experience like, the studios flying you out? And I mean, that must have been fun and entertaining, not just the interviews, but the whole pomp and stance of what they put on, what these PR companies would do.
It was great. It was, you know, people thought you went to New York and LA and all these, and sometimes abroad to Paris, to London, and that, you know, you spent all your time sightseeing and going to wonderful restaurants and things. And when people would ask me about restaurants in LA, for instance, I would say, I don't know, I've never been there, I don't know. Well, don't you eat? I have room service in my room while I'm doing my homework. But it was exciting, and thank God I had the stamina to do it, because I would work at the station Monday through Thursday, and then I had to get programs or reports ready for Thursday night, Friday night, and sometimes Saturday, and had to get all that finished before I left, because I'd go out of town Friday morning and get back midnight or later on Sunday. Usually I went directly from the airport at midnight to the TV station and got something ready for Monday. And so it was hectic in that respect. I mean, you were just always thinking work, but the work was very exciting. And, you know, you brought back interviews that nobody else in the market had, or maybe nobody else in Texas had. And so it was exciting, not only that you were meeting these people and doing interviews, but that you were giving the station something that they wouldn't have otherwise.
And Bobbie was, I mean, one of the hardest working people I'd ever seen in my life. And she inspired me, like whenever I got down or thought that I wasn't being very productive, I would always think to myself, what is Bobbie doing right now? And it's still happening, because at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll get a ding. It's Bobbie, you know, she's up working on something. And a funny story that I always love, I was talking to her one day about the Planet of the Apes, the original, with Heston. And I was talking to her about this, that, and I saw this documentary about the making of it, and she goes, oh, I was on set that day for the press junket. And it just kind of stops you in your tracks, and you're like, wow. And she's talked about having, you know, lunch with the apes at one table and the orangutans at the other.
Yeah, they took us, we were a small group then, and they took us right in on the set. And I was, you know, like from that distance to here, from the actors and the apes. And we were all just huddled there, a little press group with our 20th Century Fox guy. And and being, you know, afraid to breathe. And we stayed there through, you know, quite a bit of the filming. And then we went over to the commissary to have lunch. And in a little bit, here came the apes, you know, just the upper costume off, but in their costumes and sitting there, you know, having their lunch, their McApe lunch.
And that's why that job was so fun for me, because I would find like Planet of the Apes film And I'd be like, holy crap. It's like a, Christmas, It's like, reel it up.
When you started to go through Bobbie's stuff, what was your process? I know you had a room full of stuff. What was your triage process? What did you have to process first to save from deterioration, if that was the case at all? And what's been your method of your madness?
The first stuff to save was the 3/4 inch videotape, because that stuff's going to die first, even more than the film. Even though the film's older, it'll last longer. So I'm still in the process of saving the 3/4 inch stuff first. The film stuff is a long process because it's old, it's dirty, and you literally have to take each reel and with white gloves and chemical, and you have to clean it at least 3 or 4 times all the way through before you can even start to watch it.
Is that what you do?
What programs are you guys using to restore her stuff?
It's pretty simple. I just use, I started out using Avid, and then we moved over to Final Cut Pro, and now just kind of a combination of some older Final Cut programs and Premiere Pro.
How much footage do you think is actually is in that room? Do you know? That must be crazy.
Astronomical. I have no idea. I don't even know how many interviews we have. I'm sure we have hundreds online.
Oh, hundreds,
but I'm sure
hundreds,
there's,
if not thousands.
I'm sure there's thousands more that haven't even cracked. I mean, most of the archive, I would say, that takes up space is the 3/4 inch and the beta tapes, just because they're so darn big. They just take up a lot of space. And there's like, I don't know, boxes and boxes of 16 millimeter film that I haven't even scratched the surface, just because the process takes so long and I don't have any help, and I get busy and I can't do it, and so it just sort of sits, but at least it's in air conditioning. And
Is it mostly black and white or color or both?
it's a mixture of both. I mean, obviously the older stuff is black and white, like the stuff with Johnny, we have some interviews that she did with Johnny Carson, I think, either the day before he started the Tonight Show.
Yeah, just a few weeks before.
Yeah, it's black and white and
Yeah.
some of the older stuff.
Yeah.
It's definitely historically relevant.
Yeah.
What is it like for you, the Stevie's unearthed, and to remember what you were doing when you were doing that? That must be fun on its own.
Well, some of it, like the Johnny Carson thing, some of it, you just, it's so crystal clear, you remember everything about it. Because that was an interview that was supposed to be just Johnny and me. And we were all set up. He had come into Dallas for a B'nai B'rith group to receive an honor. And this was just in the interim of when it was announced that he was taking over the Tonight Show, but he hadn't actually started it yet. And apparently, in this interim period, he was getting really nervous and just scared to death, like, why did I ever decide to do this? And so, lo and behold, when it was time for Johnny to walk in the room, he has, for the TV interview, he has with him Ed McMahon. And we're not set up for 3 people, so quickly adjusting lights. And that's why the interview, I'm sitting in the middle with a stick mic, going to Ed here and Johnny here. And the deal was that Johnny wanted Ed there to be a backup. And he would sometimes, he would say what he wanted to say, and then he would, look over at Ed like, okay, Ed, continue on. And the interview turned out fine, but if you ever wanted to see surprised looks on the faces of the interviewer and the crew, it was when he walks in with Ed McMahon, when we were not expecting that.
And I'm
But
pretty
then-
sure they were both smoking the whole
Yes,
entire interview.
yes, yes.
There's just like a field of smoke.
Yeah, that was, I never was a smoker, and, but so many interviews, people smoked all the way through.
The lighting guys loved that.
But,
Did you ever get to interview Leno in the same fashion before he took over from Johnny, or right after?
which one?
Jay Leno?
Oh, I interviewed Jay Leno several times. I love Jay. Yeah, he's just wonderful. He's so down to earth, and I think he, has gotten some bad press because of the way things turned out between Letterman and so forth. But the times that I've been with Jay, for instance, he came to do a big benefit at Casa Mañana, and so he wanted $20,000 and a private jet to take him there and back. So he came in at 7 o'clock about 5 o'clock that night, and he was good to go on about 8 or 9 o'clock. So they met him at the private jet and had a limo to bring him in to Casa Mañana, and they had a hotel room for him, and they said, do you want to run by the hotel room first? And he said, I don't need a hotel room. And he was carrying his own bag, a suit bag, and his tuxedo was in there. And they said, well, it's there for you. No, he said, am I getting a dressing room at the theater? And they said, yes. He said, does it have a bathroom? And they said, yes. He said, that's all I need, Wow. And so he came, and then they told him on the way, said, NBC, Bobbie Wygant, and he said, yes, he knew who I was, and she's there with crew and wants to do an interview. Fine, So they came to me and said, well, he's here, and but he wants you to know if you want him in his tuxedo or the way he's dressed. I said, is he in his traditional jeans outfit, his denim? And they said, yes, denim shirt and jeans. And I said, no, that's fine. And so we sat up on the stage of Casa Mañana and we did the interview. That's the last time I interviewed him. And it was already announced that he was going off the show. And so I'd been told, well, you've got to be very careful, the network people, be very careful now, And and so I brought it up, and he just, I brought it up in kind of an oblique way toward the end of the interview, and he just picked it up and ran with it, said more than I ever could have pulled out of him, So I like Jay a lot.
I think there's also a Letterman interview on the site too.
Yes, that one was not so. I don't remember that one fondly because
I think it was a satellite.
I did one that was on tape, which we may or may not have, and a satellite. Letterman didn't like to do interviews, and he was just a kind of moody guy, I think, and I just didn't feel any rapport with him. I mean, you just do the job as best you can, but you don't have any feeling for him one way or the other. As a performer, yes, I had a lot of respect for him as a performer.
Well, we need to wrap up. I'm sorry, I could talk to you all day.
Gosh. Yes, it is.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to let us know, either one of you?
Well, I just really wanted for them to, whatever interested them. Is there anything? I think you should know that Erik has his own site too. Erik, E-R-I-K, Clapp, C-L-A-P-P, film, isn't it?
She's always plugging.
Well, you bet. No, you really should go on his site. The other night, we got together to kind of talk about this thing, and then he started showing, I said, I want to see some of your recent things, and we started looking at some of his recent things. And his work is, don't listen. Don't listen. His work is really extraordinary. And look up, isn't the Fort still on there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look up The Fort. It's a time-lapse Fort Worth at night, and it is gorgeous.
What are you working on, Erik? What can we see from you in the next year or two?
Right now I'm working on a documentary on an artist for the Amon Carter Museum called Gabriel Daw. We filmed that the last 2 weeks, so that's in editing that right now. So, and then just a lot. I specialize in a lot of like smaller mini documentaries. So,
and time lapse.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
also
amazing.
I'm also
Yes.
working on a new little show called Better in Black and White, and where I take movies that are in color. First one is Tim Burton's Batman, and I'm converting it to black and white and kind of showing people that it actually works better as a black and white film.
That's awesome, Eric.
So-
That's great.
So doing that one, and then after that one will be Psycho 2. Do that one in black and white.
Wow,
So
cool.
Can I ask a really short question?
Yes.
Both of you, what is your favorite Cary Grant screwball comedy?
Ooh.
that's tough.
Did you meet him?
I never, very quickly, I'll tell you the Cary Grant story because we have to move on. I met him. Bob Hope had flown in a whole plane load of celebrities to do a benefit down in Houston. And my husband and I went. And I mean, he had everybody, Phyllis Diller and Cary Grant. And so they were at rehearsal in the dome that was fairly new at that time. And so Cary Grant was on the stage, and I had a tape recorder, just audio tape recorder. And so I walked up, and Bob introduced me to Cary Grant. And we started talking, and Bob kind of faded in the background. And we were just having a wonderful conversation. And so I had the microphone down at the side, and I brought the microphone up, and I said, you won't mind if we continue this conversation. And he immediately changed, and he said, "You're a very nice lady, and I'd like to go on talking with you, but I'm finished unless you put that microphone away." And so I had to put the microphone away. And Bob was standing behind him going like, "I don't know, these people," because Bob would talk to anybody. And so I always say, I almost interviewed Cary Grant. Almost interviewed him.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for being
This
here.
was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
You are a wonderful group.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, and George.